It's Inside the Sixers. Paul Hudrick is going to join us to talk a little Sixers. But first, don't forget, there's no place like your home. And if you have a leak or need a new roof, call Dorothy Gale Roofing at 877-97-KEVIN or visit them online at dorothygale.com. So the question really that I think is the big question for tonight's game, it's a simple one. This game against the Lakers, is it a measuring stick game or is it just another Wednesday night in January? Let's bring Paul Hudrick in and get his thoughts on how he's viewing this game tonight. Are we looking at this game, Paul, as a game that is a measuring stick? How can you measure up against the L.A. Lakers? Or it's Wednesday night in January, not much to find out from this one.
So I would say it's definitely a measuring stick because, look, their schedule hasn't been that difficult up till now, especially when they've had, all their full complement of players, the full starting lineup. They haven't really faced a stiff test. So from that regard, it is a little bit of a barometer because this gives you an indication, okay, are they as good as we've seen them on some nights when they're all healthy and they're all playing well together, or has it been a result of maybe a little bit of a softer schedule or, catching the Heat and the Celtics when they were really shorthanded? So it will give us some form of a measuring stick to see where they're at. At the same time, if they lose, it's also not the end of the world because it is just January. And, and there's still a long way to go. And there's still, trade deadline's still 2 months away. So there's still a lot of things that can be sorted out between then and now. But I would say, yeah, for sure, up till now, this is definitely somewhat of a measuring stick for the Sixers.
It's definitely their biggest test, and they're going to play, presumably, you can answer this better than us, Paul, with the starting lineup, which they haven't lost with yet.
Correct. So it should be Seth Curry is available as of now. Joel Embiid not on the injury report. So the only guys that are out are Mike Scott still and Vincent Poirier. So they're a pretty full strength right now. And the Lakers also, Anthony Davis is probable. From what I understand, LeBron James is listed as questionable with an ankle, but that has been the case kind of with him all year. And the games that he's been listed as that he hasn't missed. That's what I'm hearing. So it appears that it will be both teams at relatively full force. So it should just be fun. I mean, it should be a hell of a matchup between two really good basketball teams. And then I think we're going to find out a little bit more about the Sixers and where they are right now.
Considering Ben Simmons had a great night against this team in the past, 28 points, 10 rebounds, 4 steals, 8 assists, what are you expecting out of him? Or does your expectations change from that, considering with this new roster, he kind of has a different style to him?
It's tough, bros, because I do think he gets up for playing against LeBron. I do think that. And listen, I know some people will be like, oh, why doesn't he get up like that for every game? Well, because you don't go up against LeBron James every game. It's just a matter, even we all watched the Last Dance documentary. Even Michael Jordan sometimes had to give himself a little extra motivation and had to fire himself up a little bit. So I think that whenever Ben Simmons sees a guy in LeBron who is a mentor to him, who has played a big part in his career, I think he does get a little bit juiced up. But I do think you raise a good point, too, in that this isn't the same team as it was last year. If you remember that game last year, Joel Embiid didn't play that night, too. So it made that win even more incredible in that sense. So I do think this is a very different roster than the roster we saw at that point last year. But, I expect Ben Simmons to come up charged up, ready to go. Does that mean he puts up 20 points? I don't know, but I think he will be fired up and he'll be ready to play tonight.
Ultimately, this is, as we kind of mentioned, this is the best test they've had. How do you think the Sixers match up with the Lakers? Because if we think they match up good, does that mean that's what our expectations are, is that you can match up with the Lakers, so therefore you should meet them somewhere down the line? You know what I'm getting at?
No, for sure. And I think the biggest way they match up with the Lakers, I think is favorable to them, as it maybe not as much with other teams, is the fact that they have two guys that have so much size but so much skill. And that's what the Lakers have. They have, Anthony Davis and LeBron James are monsters. They're huge, but they're also really athletic and they're really skilled. And the Sixers also have that in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, two guys that are bigger but are also very skilled. So from that sense, you could argue they do kind of match up better, but at the same time, they have Marc Gasol, and we all know what's happened when Joel Embiid has gone up against Marc Gasol. It has not gone well. So there's that. That's going to be an interesting hurdle for Joel Embiid tonight because he has played so well. So let's see how he does against the Marc Gasol. And then the other matchups aren't easy either. I mean, who's going to cover Dennis Schroeder tonight? It's either going to have to be Seth Curry or Danny Green. Either way, it's not a great matchup for the Sixers. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then even when you get to the bench, and you have Montrezl Harrell is going to be running the 5 against Dwight Howard. How's that going to go? So there are a lot of little matchups that I'm interested to see and to kind of see how Doc Rivers kind of views it and what he does. But I do think, again, from that standpoint of just a size and a skill standpoint, they match up pretty well compared to most teams.
Do you think Doc will coach this game differently in terms of the rotations and how deep he goes, knowing, okay, we're stepping up, let's see, almost treat it like a playoff game? Does he shorten the rotation or regular season? Well, because you mentioned Gasol, I'm interested because, Brown used to get hammered for they can't figure out how to, adjust against Gasol. Was it Gasol taking him out, or did the Sixers not make good adjustments in those series against Toronto? By all accounts, Brett made some good adjustments against Toronto. They just made some more shots. But I'm really interested in that matchup to see if Rivers uses Embiid differently, knowing that Gasol has given him issues.
Yeah, and to the first part of it, like Doc, I don't think Doc's going to treat it any differently. I think he's going to treat it like we're all looking at it as this barometer, and we can all talk about that. But I think for him, he's looking at it as, hey, we have a really good team coming into play to play us tonight, so let's just be ready to play. I don't think he's going to do anything too drastic as far as rotation-wise or anybody who will play. I think he's just going to really ride with the guys that he's ridden with so far, and I think that's the way he's going to look at it. As far as the Gasol matchup, I'm really interested too, because I think with Toronto, not only was it Gasol, who was just really good one-on-one, it was Nick Nurse and the way that they and the Toronto players schemed against him, double and triple teaming him, and the way they did it and the way they attacked him, I think was really good too. So I'm curious to see how Frank Vogel does it with the Lakers, how they plan to, because look, there's going to be some possessions where it's going to be Embiid versus Marc Gasol one-on-one, but he's also going to get double teamed a lot. And I'm interested to see where they come from, when they do it, how they do it. So I think that's going to be the biggest chess match. Is this team is built, as we've seen, this team is built around Joel Embiid, and it's around Joel Embiid in the post. So if either one, can Doc find a way to make that work, or two, can Doc find a way to exploit the rest of the Lakers scheme to punish them for paying so much attention to Embiid?
I think there's obviously LeBron fatigue because he just dominates for so long, but you can argue he might be playing the best basketball of his career this year. What have you seen so far from him this season that you notice?
I mean, just kind of what you said, bros. I mean, he's LeBron still. I mean, this guy is still 36 years old. I mean, I'm 36 years old, and my body does not do what LeBron James's body does. Like, we're not supposed to. It's not supposed to work that way. But you kind of see, I mean, look at Tom Brady now. He's 43 years old going into the Super Bowl. It's the same thing with LeBron. He takes care of himself. He's made adjustments as his career has gone on. When he needs to take a break, he listens to his body, and he'll take a night off if he needs to. And I just think that's what's so impressive, is not only just the greatness that we saw at his, whatever, quote unquote, peak physically when he was in his late 20s, with the Heat in those years, just the fact that he has now, he's smarter than he's ever been. And he still is taking such great care of himself, and he's still at the top of his game. So I think that's what stands out. It's just he is a marvel of athleticism, and a marvel at his age to be doing what he's doing.
Do you think this Lakers team is better than the team? I know last year was kind of quirky and weird, but do you think this is a better Lakers team? They lost Howard, they lost Green, they've added some younger pieces. They also lost Rondo.
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it. I think offensively, yes, definitely better when you look at a guy like Schroeder, who is if you watch the Lakers in the finals, they kind of had a little bit of trouble on offense like the Sixers did. They didn't really have enough, to me, shot creation. You saw LeBron and Anthony Davis making a lot of and they can do it because they're so great, but making a lot of really tough shots and playing some iso ball because they didn't have another guy that could do it. Now you add a guy like Schroeder, who is so slippery and so dangerous, and so crafty, that to add him to the mix, I think makes them better in that regard. And then adding a guy like Harrell, who's same offensively and that energy he provides. But I think they do take a little bit of a hit defensively when you lose a Danny Green, when you lose an Avery Bradley, and you lose a Rondo. And a guy like Schroeder, just he's gotten better as his career has gone on, but he's still undersized, and he's still not the greatest defender in the world. Harrell, great energy, great offensive player, but defensively as a 5, not a necessarily great rim protector, not a great one-on-one player against post players. So I think it offensively, I think undoubtedly they've improved. Defensively, I'm still waiting to see over the long haul. I mean, when you have Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Marc Gasol, that's a pretty good defensive core there. But yeah, I'm still curious to see how it all kind of plays out throughout the season.
We brought this up before, but I heard Doc Rivers mention it recently in a post-game presser about this backup power forward position. Is there someone out there that you think would fit best with this team?
The name I always think of, and it's the name that most fans think of, is PJ Tucker. Would just be such a sensational fit as like a backup four, because talk about a guy, like a glue guy who just does a little bit of everything and just plays hard and does all the dirty work. Plus he hits, that corner, he lives in the corners and hits threes from there. And it's just so many little things he does that make your basketball team better. Such a winning player. So that's the guy that really jumps out to me when we're looking at that. And, Daryl Morey did help drive up the price on James Harden. So maybe they throw him a bone and give him PJ Tucker for a couple second-round picks or something, with the Sixers using that trade exception they got from Al Horford. Another name I've seen come up is almost former Sixer Nemanja Bjelica from the Sacramento Kings. Guy can really shoot the ball, a decent passer for a big man, not nearly the defensive player that a Tucker is. So I think there are options. There are ways they can upgrade that position. But Tucker, to me, that's the clear-cut guy. That's the guy I would love to see them bring in.
All right. And Paul, people want to trade Ben. They want to move on. My question, I guess, is after watching Monday night, no Embiid, I guess we were both saying, okay, you realize you're not good enough. You just lose Embiid, you lose to Detroit. That's not good enough. You can't lose to that team just because your best player's out. You're still roster-wise better than them. So did you take anything from losing that game the way they did just by not having Embiid, and did it trip you off in any way to say they got to do something major, or are you still like I guess the options are you trade Ben and change that dynamic, or you trade 2 or 3 of the younger pieces and get like a secondary player to add to Ben and Joel, and I guess Harris.
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet. Listen, it's troubling. I will acknowledge that every time Joel Embiid does not play, they fall off a cliff. I will say, too, Saturday, I didn't think they were particularly good Saturday night. I mean, they won the game. They took care of business, and that was good within itself. But, I mean, it took everything they had to beat Detroit by 4 with Joel Embiid. So I just think they weren't, like, the last 2 games, they haven't really played their best basketball. This matchup against LA, I think, could be a factor. Maybe a few guys were looking a little too far ahead. But Monday night, it was just a perfect storm of Joel Embiid doesn't play. Ben Simmons gets in foul trouble early. Seth Curry, I think, had his worst game as a Sixer, which is to say I think he had his first bad game as a Sixer. Tobias was still really good, I thought. Dwight Howard was just, he was really bad as a starting center. And Tony Bradley actually gave them really good minutes as the backup 5.
Would you just play Howard off the bench even if Embiid is out? Would you get to that point where just keep him in the same role?
It sure sounds like that's Doc Rivers' plan going forward. And I kind of do like that idea, because when you look at it, like, it's not necessarily about Tony Bradley and him starting for Embiid. It's about Dwight Howard and the way he plays with that second unit. And I think he plays better with that second unit because you have Maxey, you have Milton, who he can run that pick and roll with. And I think that's where he really excels, setting really good hard screens for those guys and then rolling hard to the basket with Shake and Maxey. I think his game just fits those guys. Like when you look at Ben Simmons and Dwight Howard, it's just a terrible combination to have both of those guys on the floor together and running the pick and roll together. It just doesn't work because of their skill sets. So I think that's the biggest thing that Doc Rivers might see is like, hey, Dwight and Ben Simmons probably shouldn't play in many lineups together. So going forward, I would, and especially to hear Doc tell it, I would anticipate that when Joel Embiid is out, Tony Bradley starts and Dwight Howard will come off the bench.
You brought up the foul trouble by Ben, and my blood started boiling, specifically that 3rd and 4th foul. The 3rd one on Blake Griffin, you put yourself in a situation for them to make the call, but the 4th one, when he's at the top of the three-point line, Blake Griffin throws a pump fake, you bite. The Sixers actually had a nice run leading up to that point. You got to be more aware of the situation. I couldn't believe it. What were your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I totally agree. And especially that third quarter, because, they were down big at the half and he gave them some juice. He made a couple nice drives, made a couple of nice defensive plays. And they were starting to kind of scratch and claw their way back in it. And then he commits. It was a dumb foul. You can't, Blake Griffin is a much improved 3-point shooter, but you don't need to challenge him like you do some other guys. And you also know that at this point in his career, Blake Griffin isn't nearly as explosive. So dare him to blow by you and try to get to the basket because he can't do it anymore. So yeah, I was really disappointed by his game overall. And in a situation where he has to be aware of the fact that Joel Embiid is not playing. So you have to play smart. You can't get yourself in foul trouble because the team desperately needs you. Now, I would say on the other end of that, you look at it like, well, guess what? The best parts of the game were the parts where he kind of played. So that also kind of shows his importance. So it's kind of a double-edged thing where I didn't love the way he played. He's got to play smarter. But I also think it shows that he does have value and how good he can be when he is right and he's playing smart and he's playing the right way.
All right, that game's tonight, 7:30. It's a 7:30 start on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers and the Lakers. We'll see how this one goes down. Sixers and Lakers both expected to be at full strength. Now, Paul, the big question we want to know is, do you blow your nose? Are you a nose blower?
I saw this on Twitter, and I gotta yes, because I don't know what's the alternative. Just sucking it up.
No, it's more of the dab, I guess. Like
or
you
the
just
sniffle, like you just go sniffing all day.
Some people sniff all day. Yeah, see, no, I can't. No, you gotta just it's your body is telling you to get rid of it. Like that's
but here's the problem. Gil, see, I acknowledge that I know how to do it. Gil doesn't know how to blow his nose. I'm just more of like a dabber. I'll blow my nose once in a while. He flat out doesn't even know how to blow the nose.
I can't get on that.
Do you go handkerchief?
Because no, I'm tissue guy.
Oh, he goes tissues. See, we're anti-buying tissues. Just use toilet paper. Why are we buying tissues now? It's more money.
Oh man, because one thing I've learned in my age now that I am 36 is that self-care, man. Like my nose, I want to pamper it. I want to take care of it. I don't want it all red and irritated. That's just the way I feel. So no, I'm not gonna rub some like sandpaper, one-ply toilet paper on my nose. No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like I don't know. I don't like the aerodynamics of blowing outwards to get the snot out is just like foreign. I can't, like bros can do like the
snot rock.
I can't do that either. I don't know.
On a baseball field, maybe?
Yeah, that's why I said it's situational. I'm not going to sit here and pull the trash can over during the break and give a snot rocket. It's when I'm in the locker room or something like that.
Like I went to school with a guy who was one of those dudes that could put the chain up his nostril and pull it out the other side. You ever see one of those guys?
What?
Yeah, I know. That's like a magic. No, I'm out on that, but
yeah, because they pull it out. I don't know. Maybe he was. I don't know. You ever see that?
No.
Is it crayon or crown?
I say crayon personally.
Okay. All right, we're good. We're good. We made up.
Yeah. All right, Paul Hudrick. Check out Coming In for a Landing, the podcast at Paul Hudrick. Sixers, Lakers tonight. And, of course, you can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN, 7:30. Thanks, Paul.
You got it, Mike.
He'll be back on Friday for Inside the Sixers.